Hi, it's mean old Granny, for goodness sakes. Tonight I'm going to share a column I wrote a few years back. We had a cute little dog, a Lhasa Apso, named Columbus. And it starts with a little bit about Columbus, but moves on to something a little bit different than Columbus. It's called Following Too Closely. One day, I stepped on my dog. He's always underfoot. After apologizing, I added, "You know, Columbus, if you follow too closely, you're apt to get stepped on." I jotted that thought down, thinking it sounded like an inspiration for a column. As I write this, I realize I have often followed too closely, centering my life on my family, forgetting to make my own life and have my own goals based on my own dreams. There are many good reasons not to follow too closely. Besides losing yourself or getting stepped on, loved ones can end up feeling smothered and controlled. Ask my children and husband. On second thought, don't. The women's movement from the 70s was supposed to have solved these problems for women. Women were to gain freedom from the roles put on them by society and by men. And if you study history, there was a time when the women's liberation was needed. Women couldn't vote, own property, or even attend school in the 1800s and even into the early 20th century. Though much good has come out of the women's movement, we need to move to the next step, which is to give honor to what traditional female roles and functions performed. In many ways, I think the women's movement made many of us deny our real selves rather than finding and expressing them. In the women's movement, we may have followed too closely the male way of being. We became business owners, engineers, soldiers, doctors, and lawyers. Any work that had been male-dominated, women pursued, and we often succeeded. We demanded equal pay for those jobs. Some people would argue that we still don't have that. And while there's nothing wrong with wanting equal pay, except by buying into the belief that male-dominated professions and work are better than female-dominated ones, we actually ended up making women's traditional work less valued. The functions that women had been performing for centuries of nurturing children and creating warm, welcoming homes were and are potentially the most important functions of all. In many ways, women traded one set of confining roles for another. What goes on in homes, how we treat each other, how we solve the everyday problems in our homes, how we manage the work that needs to be done to keep a home healthy, socially, emotionally, and physically, determines how family members perform in the larger community and the world. We, and I am including in this we, our children, our culture, our country, and our world all need someone who is making sure that home environments are nurturing and healthy. When the child protection team I was involved with we were seeking to prevent child abuse and to raise money, we found sweatshirts to sell. The saying on it was, "Peace in the world starts with peace in the home." Boy, do I believe that. Homes are not like Las Vegas. The saying, "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas." Well, that's not true about homes. What happens in homes doesn't stay just at home. What happens in homes impacts every aspect of our culture. Perhaps I should speak just about myself. I bought into the women's movement, majoring in mathematics at an engineering college my father had attended. But the work, it didn't interest me. Gradually, I figured out analyzing people problems was much more fascinating to me. I went to graduate school to major in counseling, and I loved it. When my last child was born, I had planned on continuing to work full-time. But my boss said to me, "I'd love to have you back if you work as hard as you did before you were pregnant. I was furious. I thought he was a sexist jerk. So I didn't return to work. But now looking back on it, I would thank him for his comment. The years I spent as a homemaker and community volunteer were some of my best. While children are growing up, they need parents who fulfill several roles. They need a financial provider, protector, and a nurturer, supporter. We, my husband and I, ended up splitting the roles. He took on the first of provider, and I took on the second of nurturer and supporter at home. I wouldn't say it was perfect, and now when I look at my personal lack of financial success, it is a little painful. But overall, I have no regrets. The financial success and the emotional health and well-being of our family, we get to share credit for those things, both my husband and I. We were and are a team. Like most families, it hasn't always been easy balancing roles and needs of family life with work life. No solution is perfect, but respectful communication and teamwork can make most any situation work. The trickiest part of relationships may be having that closeness and yet separateness. We need each other, but we also need to feel strong and capable and independent. In one of my doctoral classes, we studied how most successful people have both sets, the traditional male and the traditional female ways of being. A great leader is assertive at expressing his or her expectations, and even as she or he nurtures, encourages, and mentors underlings so they also can succeed. Before the women's movement, many women thought we didn't have value unless our homes were perfectly spotless, our children perfectly behaved, and supper was homemade and always on the table at a certain time. Now we know that wasn't realistic. Yet after the women's movement, we believed we didn't have value if we didn't bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, and never let you forget you're a man. That last quote was from an old television commercial from the 80s. Always bugged me. It's a balancing act, sort of a dance. Loving connection mixed with strong independence, freedom with responsibility, togetherness and separateness. How does anyone find the balance? I don't know. I already stated I'm not very good at it. Most of the time, I focus too much on personal relationships and not enough on developing my career and independence. Anyway, that's what it sometimes has seemed. But you know what I just realized? All this relationship stuff has become my career, my life work. My writing, my counseling, my teaching are all about loving, healthy relationships. So maybe you can find a balance. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, and sometimes you stay the heck out of the way, unless you're Columbus. But sometimes it's pretty nice to be followed closely. Columbus is curled up by my foot right now, and it feels pretty good. I think we'll go for a walk. Good night. For goodness sakes, that's all from mean old Granny.